Marfoogle News going live in 3, 2, 1. All right, what is going on, guys? It is Adam, a.k.a. Marf, and this is Marfoogle News. Warren Buffett says tariffs are, quote, an act of war to some degree. I like how he says, it's an act of war to some degree. But actually, there has been a lot of comments by different countries this week that actually agree with Warren Buffett. If you don't know what tariffs he's speaking of course, the U.S. has tariffed Canada, Mexico, Taiwan, China, and pretty much every other country that had any kind of tariff on the U.S. Now, Warren Buffett, somebody who a ton of people follow and basically try to copy his moves, or they basically worship the ground he walks on as far as financial advice, he's basically saying that this is an act of war. Kind of. As far as tariffs are an act of war to some degree, Warren Buffett said. Warren Buffett is one of the world's most legendary investors, so what does he think of tariffs and how they will affect the economy? The billionaire chairman of CEO in Berkshire Hathaway says tariffs are, quote, an act of war to some degree. Over time, they are a tax on goods. I mean, the tooth fairy doesn't pay him. He said in an interview with CBS News Morning, when asked on how tariffs would impact inflation, it says, and then what? You always have to ask in questions in economics. You always say, and then what? When asked about the current economy, Buffett said, well, I think it's the most interesting subject in the world, but I won't talk. I can't talk about it, though. I really can't. It's sort of a strange answer there if you ask me. The 94-year-old known as the Oracle of Omaha added that, quote, a majority of any money I manage will always be in the United States because it's the best place. So what is that actually saying? And did he just throw in a little hint there that the United States is going to separate from this giant massive war that they look to be continuing? They are going to push and push and push until all of Europe is on fire. And somehow we might actually escape this, but for how long? Again, we'll talk about this on Marfoogle News, today's short. Before we move on, make sure to go check out marfooglenews.com/EMP. Go over and check out, again, the EMP Shield, because this is a device that can protect you against not only an EMP strike or multiple EMP strikes, but it can also protect you against a Carrington-level event from the sun. It can actually be put in less than 10 minutes. It's very easy to put in, red to red on your battery, black to black on your battery, and green to ground. Go to marfooglenews.com/EMP and code MARF. Again, this is the same company that's outfitting agencies like DHS and DOD, and of course now on the DEMSO team helping protect the Texas grid. Go check it out, and it is, of course, $50 off with our code MARF, and you are helping support our independent channel. When we're sick, we don't have anybody to fill in. There is no group of people running the show. There's no multi-million-dollar company. It's just us, and we plow through it. All right, let's bring in my co-internet brother, Dex James. What is going on, and how are you doing today?
Well, hello, Adam, and hello, Foogle fam. I'm doing just fine.
All right, let's talk about this Newsmax story that they basically said that Trump blasts Zelenskyy over worst comment. What was the worst comment?
Yeah, so he went off. He was doing a conference today, a $100 billion investment in the U.S. from TSMC, which is also decent news to think about the fact that Taiwan Semiconductor is going to be diversifying out of Taiwan into America further more than they've already done by another $100 billion. But during that, he was asked about the Zelenskyy statements, and his new statement is that Zelenskyy said that he thinks the end of the war with Russia is, quote, still very, very far away. So Trump said that's just, he went off on it thinking that that's, not a good statement to be making when you're trying to, negotiate, just like he was talking when they had him in the Oval Office, how he was talking smack about Putin and everything. He's like, you can't come to the negotiating table when you're talking smack about the other side. If you're trying to actually bring about peace and have a negotiation, you gotta be a little bit more respectful than that. You can't just start throwing down the daggers. So he furthermore points that that's Trump furthermore said that's just proof that he believes that Zelenskyy and Europe just want to continue the war. That's all they really want.
And, he keeps saying Zelenskyy, but Zelenskyy, in my opinion, is just a puppet put in for his action, for his ability to play a president. But I was just talking to a good friend of mine, and of course, it's so crazy where our community is going, and everybody is kind of digging down different rabbit holes. Now, some people are afraid of where it is going, where it's not going to go. Now, people are stepping back and going, holy moly, both sides are crazy rich billionaires with scary agendas. And it's like, yeah, duh. Everybody's known that for a very long time. So which scary billionaire agenda is better for us, though? It's like, hey, which billionaire creepy dystopian agenda is better for you? AI and robots or war and death? I don't know. You guys vote. Again, Zelenskyy, they always push him into this, but he's just kind of the poster boy in the green shirt. And then Ukraine's still ready to sign minerals deal despite the spat, Zelenskyy says. So this does not really put him in the good corner, as far as a lot of people think that this is kind of sad. Especially since this whole spat happened and everything else. They feel that he humiliated him. Most people think that he should give, the president the middle finger. Well, then there's reality. The war, if it's going to continue going, it's not even him. It's like, who decides for him to sign this thing? Just like our, previous times where our country was run, most people, including the people that supported him, were like, yeah, he's not exactly the one making all of the day-to-day decisions. As far as this goes, who do you think is making the decisions for Ukraine? Ukraine is now heavily tied in with NATO. Are they really making direct deals with him for all of those minerals in the country? And then if truly he was in charge, he would have already stepped down, considering all of the crazy stuff that they have investigated, like the 9 people right underneath him stepping down for magically having mansions and supercars as regular soldiers. So a couple days after leaving the White House with an agreement, the Ukrainian president told reporters that his country is ready to sign a minerals deal with the U.S. So Dex, when I see this, I'm like, what the heck? So now he's saying, oh, we're good. Oh, no, we're still ready. But is there a catch? Is there the gotcha if you do this, right?
Well, look, ultimately, the only people he's got on his side are of any significance is France and the UK, and mostly UK, who's willing to help fund. But if he wants to get to a negotiating table, who's the last person you want at that table? And that's the UK. They are the absolute arch enemy of Russia. They've been enemies since before World War II. They have a long history of hating one another. So the last person you want necessarily negotiating therefore you are having some semblance of negotiation, I would think would be the UK. That's just my take. He didn't say that, but he's left basically with Europe. So if he really wants to have an opportunity towards peace and he doesn't want to continue the war, his only option is to work with the US, because I can't see the rest of them actually pulling it off. They may fund them for a little bit, and that's what they've all pledged to do, but that only lasts so long. That gravy train can't last as long as the American gravy train.
And the American gravy train is the longest American gravy train.
And one other thing, it came out from a White House staffer or an official, I should say, that they have stopped now sending any more weapons to Ukraine, period, from the U.S.
Well, if that's the truth, I'm pretty sure, according to the media, then that means also the cartels are going to be really mad. So that's too bad. And then NATO coming to Dayton, 5 things to know about security on the global stage. Now, we covered this when the inception and the announcement, because this has been in the works for a long time. There is going to be a NATO village inside of Ohio. Why Ohio? I still do not get that. But if you did not watch that previous video, make sure to go and watch that, because there's some pretty interesting changes. And this is, to me, very concerning. NATO, yes, the North American Treaty Alliance, is going to have a section cordoned off in Ohio. They've taken these areas and essentially made that they are only for basically VIP soldiers, NATO members, NATO leaders, and then some of their close family. And if you don't have badges, if you don't have the credentials, you're locked out. You're locked out of these barbed wired fences, right? And they have essentially made what media is calling a NATO village. Why is a NATO village being held in Ohio? Especially when you're watching the news for the last month and you're like, wait, we're pulling everything out, like in every fashion of the sense. Our president has been like, yeah, we're really going to kind of step back a bit. We're not going to throw you out on the curb, but pretty much we're going to close the door and put you on the porch. So what is going on with this? Again, let's see here. In May, a Parliamentary Assembly of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization will hold its first meeting in the U.S. in 20 years in Dayton. The event will mark the 30th anniversary of the Dayton Peace Accords. The NATO Parliamentary Assembly is a big deal, and this event is years in the making. Today, we look at what this means for Dayton. Here are 5 things to know from the reporting. Security concerns. The last NATO Parliamentary Assembly in Montreal in November was marred by protesters crashing with police. And of course, it was a violent scene and smashed storefront windows and set cars ablaze. It says whether Dayton could see such chaos, of course, nobody knows. And then NATO Village, partially in response to what happened in Montreal, NATO organizers are establishing, quote, a NATO Village, encompassing much of downtown Dayton, where foreign delegates will meet. Access to this area will be restricted. Again, you're going to have a chunk of downtown Dayton have some of the most important people in Europe and in NATO all in one place. Kind of creepy if you think about what could happen there, especially since there's kind of a current war going on with Russia and all of this, and they need a really good, fantastic Freddy to get it popping. And then world stage, the NATO Parliamentary Assembly is coming to Dayton as NATO itself faces an existential crisis over how to respond to a war in Ukraine. In this story, we look at how Dayton on the world stage, blah, 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 during a historic time and debate over how to end the bloodiest conflict in Europe since NATO was formed after World War II. And then CareSource Properties and the Benjamin Marion Schuster and all of these local places will host NATO events with a possible closing celebration at the National Museum of the U.S. Air Force. So there is going to be local businesses that are essentially going to be closed to everyone except for these NATO Village members, right? And then this whole thing, they are actually... federal funds are going to put at least $2 million or have put at least $2 million into putting this thing together. So they're probably going to have some pretty nice snacks. But one thing I wonder is with all of the important people that are going to be in downtown Dayton, which nobody really thinks of like Dayton, Ohio, and I've got my people in the Ohio. I've got people and family there, so I hope nothing crazy happens. But you really don't think of like the biggest stories in the world in Ohio. This one could turn into one. Dex, go ahead.
Yeah, it was 1995 when they had the Dayton Peace Accords, the Dayton Agreement, which ended the Bosnian War. So I guess they had their meeting there, and that's what signifies, I guess, why it's so important for them to come back to this location. But given the stakes that are happening right now, I don't think anybody around here really wants anything to do with NATO inside America at the moment.
No, I believe you are right. What in the world happened? What is going on here? Uh-oh. Sorry about that. I hit the PFL button. If you have a mixer, then you know exactly what I did, and you know how dumb I am. All right. Well, again, there's much, much more on tonight's show over on Marfoogle TV. And if you haven't checked that out, then make sure to go over to marfooglenews.com. And all you have to do is go to the main page, look for today's thumbnail to get a full source list for every single article, tweet, video, picture, document for today's show. You have a bibliography, you have tweets, you have everything else. But again, there is everything right there at your fingertips. So make sure to join us. And again, also join us over at Marfoogle TV. If you're in the chat, then make sure to just stay there. You'll be ported over. And if you are watching the replay, all you have to do is click here. We'll see you in a few minutes. Be safe, be prepared, and Marf out.